Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's reading from Brilliant as the Sun, a retelling of Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 4. We're going to begin chapter 21. Prithu instructs his citizens. Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Sat. Prithu teaches his citizens how to perfect their lives. Vidur's face lit up in a broad smile. Your narrations fill me with joy. Pray tell me what happened after the great King Prithu reached his capital. Verses 1 to 4, Maitreya said, the king saw that the city had been wonderfully decorated. Buildings were adorned with strings of pearls, flower garlands, and brightly colored silk cloth. Golden gates were erected all along the main road, and at each intersection there were pillars of bananas and betel trees. On every house were attractive decorations of fruits, flowers, grains, and varied minerals. The air was filled with fragrant incense and the streets sprinkled with perfumed water. Cheering citizens greeted the king with offerings of lamps, flowers, and yogurt. Many groups of beautiful young girls, their golden earrings and ankle bells jingling melodically, gathered to receive Prithu. Verses 5 to 7, as the king entered his palace, Brahmins recited Vedic hymns. Hundreds of conch shells were sounded and drums beaten. Prithu smiled in appreciation as he took his place on his golden throne. Representatives of the different orders in society came forward to greet him and offer worship, and Prithu in turn offered them benedictions. Everyone revered the king as the most spiritually advanced person in the kingdom. He performed many glorious activities while ruling over the earth and was always magnanimous, achieving great success in all his endeavors. His reputation spread throughout the universe. At the end of his life, he attained the Lord's association. Maitreya looked silently at Vidur as if asking what else he would like to hear. Verses 8 to 10, Vidur glorified Maitreya and then summarized what he had understood. After Prithu was enthroned by the Brahmins, the gods offered him innumerable gifts, and Lord Vishnu personally empowered him to develop the earth's natural resources. He was so great and benevolent that his example is followed by rulers on various planets to this day. I am keen to hear more about him. Please therefore tell me everything about his auspicious activities. Verses 11 to 12, my dear Vidur, Prithu lived in the tract of land between the two great rivers, Ganges and Yamuna. As Vishnu's empowered incarnation, he was not subject to the reactions of past pious or impious activities. However, in his humility, he considered that the great opulence he enjoyed was diminishing the results of his previous piety. Such was his power that he ruled all 7 islands of Bhumandal. Everyone except Brahmins and Vaishnavas were subject to his orders. Verse 13, once he began another grand sacrifice attended by the great saintly sages, Brahmins and gods from the higher planets, as well as the pious kings from earth. Listen now as I describe what happened. Verses 14 to 18, when his august guests had taken their places, Prithu worshipped them according to their status. Standing in the midst of the assembly, he appeared like the full moon surrounded by stars. Everyone was captivated by his bodily beauty. Tall and sturdy, he was extremely handsome, with broad chest and shoulders and powerful arms. He had a graceful nose, eyes like red lotuses, and smile which revealed his pure white teeth. His tapering abdomen, as well muscled, shaped like a banyan leaf with 3 lines and a coiled navel. His legs resembled golden pillars and his feet were raised at the instep. Curls of fine black hair framed his face, and his neck was like a conch shell marked with auspicious lines. He exchanged his valuable silk dhoti and shawl for a black deer skin as the sacrifice commenced, revealing his pleasing masculine features. The chief priest initiated him for the ritual with sacred mantras, slipping the ring of sacred kusha grass onto the king's finger. Guided by the Brahmins, Prithu observed all the necessary regulations. Verses 19 and 20. When the preparations had been made, Prithu delighted everyone by standing up and glancing at them. His eyes glistened like stars shining through a sky filled with morning dew. He spoke in a sonorous voice. The Brahmins marveled at his use of metaphor, his clarity and deep realization of spiritual truth. His words were grave and filled with beneficial instructions for his citizens. Verses 21 and 22. Looking toward the devotees in the assembly, Prithu said, Dear gentle persons, I wish you all good fortune, O great souls. Please hear me with attention and tell me if my words meet your approval. By Krishna's grace, I have been appointed king and have the solemn responsibility to protect you from danger, ensuring that everyone is engaged according to their nature. Verse 23, by properly executing my God-given duties, I will please the Lord and by His grace attain both in this life and the next those destinations which the great authorities describe as most desirable. Any monarch who does not teach his citizens how to perform their respective duties and merely exacts taxes from them will suffer for his people's impiety and lose his good fortune. The Brahmins called out, Very true. Verse 25. Prithu turned to the throngs of citizens present. Therefore, dear citizens, I ask you to always think of Lord Vishnu within your hearts and execute your varnashram, religious duties. This will be good for you and will bestow mercy upon your king for his welfare after death. Prithu then addressed, this is verse 26, Prithu then addressed the heavenly denizens. I request that all you pure-hearted gods, celestials and sages support my proposal, for the pious results of an act are enjoyed after death by the performer, by he who orders it, and whoever offers their support. One citizen pushed through the crowds, noticing the commotion. Prithu had him brought forward. The man stood before Prithu with hands on hips. O king, you want us to worship Vishnu on the grounds he is the Supreme Lord. Prithu nodded. Certainly. Is this right? Your father, King Vena, believed differently. He taught us everything happens by the chance of combination of matter. A low murmur passed through the crowd. It seemed that some were in agreement. Verses 27 to 29. Prithu raised his arms to quieten the assembly. My dear respectable persons, according to the Vedic authority, there is certainly a supreme controller who awards us the results of our work. He turned to the man, do not doubt that this is true. Otherwise, how do you account for the fact that some are more fortunate than others, possessing superior beauty and power in this life and the next? The existence of a controller is confirmed not only by Vedic evidence, but by the examples of great personalities such as Manu, Uttanpad, Dhruva, Priyavrat, my grandfather Anga, and many other exalted individuals, including Prahlad and Bali. They all accept the supremacy of Vishnu, who carries a club. Then why did King Vena teach us otherwise? Asked the interloper. Verses 30 and 31. Prithu said, my father Vena, the grandson of death personified, was a sinful man, confused about religious truths, so please do not take his words seriously. All the great personalities I have just named agree that only by the blessings of Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality, can anyone do their duties, prosper or enjoy their senses, what to speak of go to heaven or achieve liberation. Indeed, just by trying to serve Lord Vishnu, anyone who is suffering can immediately cleanse the dirt which has accumulated in their minds over innumerable births. I'll repeat. Indeed, just by trying to serve Lord Vishnu, anyone who is suffering can immediately cleanse the dirt which has accumulated in their minds over innumerable births. The purifying power of devotional service is as great as that of Ganges, which washes the Lord's toes. It sanctifies the mind and gradually enhances one's spiritual consciousness. The man asked, "My Lord, how can I get all these benefits?" Verse 32. Prithu smiled benevolently. "You must hear about and glorify Krishna's name, form, qualities and pastimes. This will completely free your mind of all misunderstandings and mental speculations. Then detachment from material enjoyment will arise in your heart. When knowledge of your spiritual identity in relation to the Lord awakens, you will never return to this material existence filled with three types of miseries." The man bowed his head in submission and with folded palms stepped back. Prithu looked over at the leaders of the four Varnas. One of the chief merchants said, "O king, most of us are householders steeped in worldly affairs. Generally, the Lord is worshipped by elevated personalities like Brahma, Shiva, and the great sages. How is it possible for people like us to develop our relationship with Him and become detached from the material world?" Verse 33. Thanking him for his question, Prithu said, "Simply try to satisfy Vishnu with your body, mind, and words by hearing about him from spiritual authorities and glorifying him, and by sincerely performing your duties, offering him the results of your work. This is possible for anyone, even one in the lowest status of life. Do this to the best of your ability without pretense and with firm faith in Vishnu. Then you will achieve the highest success, receive all necessities of life, and when you quit this body, you will rise to the spiritual world." The merchant said, "Dear King Prithu, forgive my ignorance. How do we offer the fruits of our work to Vishnu?" Prithu replied, "You can please him by sacrifice." The merchant looked doubtful. "We do perform sacrifice, but to secure our material needs, we sacrifice to Surya for health, to Indra for rain, to Durga for a good wife. Are these rituals not materialistic? How can they please Vishnu?" Verse 34. Prithu smiled. These were the very confusions he wanted to address. He said, "All these sacrifices include at least a touch of devotion to Vishnu, who is purely spiritual and uncontaminated by matter. In all of them, Vishnu is given a central position. This is very important to understand, since even a little endeavor to please Vishnu is of great value. Even a tinge of devotion purifies the performer and gradually brings him to the spiritual platform. Therefore, although such rituals are superficially material, the results are transcendental." The merchant raised his eyebrows. "Do you mean to say that the detached Brahmin gets the same result from performing sacrifice as one like me who still aspires for worldly enjoyment?" Verse 35. "Different performers get different results," replied Prithu. "Although the supreme transcendence is all-pervading, present in every heart, he is perceived to a greater or lesser degree depending on one's consciousness. Let me explain. Fire is always fire, but depending on the size and type of wood, the fire will appear larger or smaller. Similarly, the transcendental Lord is one, but depending on the consciousness of the sacrifices performer, he will perceive him either as impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, or Bhagwan in his own spiritual abode." The merchant thought for some moments, and gradually a smile spread over his features. As comprehension dawned on him, he said, by serving Lord Vishnu, we can all see him to some degree, regardless of our level of consciousness. Either we will see him everywhere in all situations as his impersonal, all-pervading Brahman, or we will perceive him in our own hearts and that of others, or we will directly enter into a relationship with him in his spiritual abode. Everyone benefits by serving him. Prithu patted the man on the shoulder. Yes, you have understood. Thank you. The assembly became animated. Many called out, Dear Master, we shall certainly worship the Lord. Verse 36. Tears welled in Prithu's eyes. You are all more merciful to me because of our relationship as king and the subjects. When you perform your occupational duties as an offering to Vishnu, I too will benefit. Therefore, my dear citizens, I thank you. Verse 37, Prithu then approached the Brahmins and bowed before him, standing with folded hands. He said, all you Brahmin devotees of Vishnu are glorious because of your elevated spiritual qualities. You are tolerant, austere, and well-versed in scriptural knowledge, which you apply in your lives. Therefore, according to the authority, kings should not seek to govern you. Rather, we are admonished to avoid offending you at all cost. Verses 38 and 39, Prithu looked towards the assembly. Know that spiritual Supreme Lord himself, the primeval Godhead who is foremost among all great personalities, attained his everlasting fame by worshipping the lotus feet of Vaishnava Brahmins. The Lord who doesn't exist in everyone's heart is independent, not relying on anyone else for his happiness. Nevertheless, he is pleased by those who, like himself, serve such Brahmins. These are dear to Vishnu because he is very dear to them. Prithu's chief minister said, my lord, should we focus on satisfying such devotees rather than ritual fire sacrifice? Yes, this is my instruction to all my citizens. The ministers replied, the Lord forgive me, but I have a doubt. If we neglect ritual sacrifices to Agni, how will the gods be satisfied? The fire god is their mouth. Therefore, without such rituals, how will we become purified and attain liberation? Verse 40, Prithu nodded to acknowledge the questions and said, for your own welfare, kindly listen carefully. By regularly serving Vaishnava Brahmins, you can purify your hearts and enjoy supreme peace, material detachment, and full satisfaction. There is no ritual or duty superior to such service, by which you can even please the gods. He walked through the throngs of citizens who parted to allow access to the fire pits, where the priests were pouring ladles of ghee into the fire while uttering mantras to the gods Indraya Swaha, Adityaya Swaha. His ministers, generals, and leading citizens followed closely behind him. Verse 41, turning to them, Prithu said, according to Vedic injunctions, Lord Vishnu eats the offerings made in fire sacrifices in the same names of different gods. When the priests utter the word Swaha, it indicates their desire to satisfy Vishnu through gods like Indra and Aditya. Know this for sure, my dear people. Vishnu takes more pleasure in accepting offerings made to his learned, pure devotees than he does from offerings made to the sacrificial fire. The Lord is always in the company of such devotees, and by feeding them, we directly feed him. The chief minister asked, Your Majesty, how can we recognize a qualified devotee Brahmin? Verse 42, this is an important question, said Prithu. Firstly, he knows all the Vedic all the Vedic conclusions and has full faith in them. Conditioned souls are subject to 4 defects: a tendency to commit mistakes, to be illusioned and cheat. And they possess imperfect senses. So 4 defects, and the 5th that they have got the human beings have the imperfect senses as well. Since devotees only speak according to the Vedas, whatever they say is transcendental to these 4 defects. Furthermore, they engage in auspicious penance by controlling their mind and senses. This means they accept what is favorable for discharging the devotional service to Vishnu and reject which is not favorable. By thus aligning their thoughts, words and deeds with Vishnu, will genuine Brahmins continuously see the Lord within their heart. Verses 43 and 44. Prithu folded his palms. Respectable ones, I beg your blessings that I will always carry the foot dust of such Brahmins on my head by following their instructions. One who does so is quickly relieved of suffering and develops all good qualities. You should understand that the elders in society are not those who are advanced in age, but those who possess the scriptural wisdom. These are the true Brahmins. By following their instructions, you will develop their virtues, including their greatest assets of good conduct and gratitude for the Lord's mercy. Then all the opulence will naturally come to you. May the Lord and his associates, the Brahmins and the cows, be pleased with me. Verse 45. Prithu walked back to his throne amid cheers from the assembly. All praise to King Prithu. The gods, sages, Pitris and Brahmins offered him blessings, uttering wise ones, sadhu. Verses 46 and 47. One of the leading sages, clad in a simple loincloth and shawl, holding a water pot and staff, stepping forward, O King, the Vedas declare that one can attain the heavens by the actions of saintly son. Your father, the sinful Vena, was killed by the Brahman's curse. However, you have delivered him from the darkest region of hellish life. You remind me of the great devotee Prahlad, who similarly delivered his sinful father Hiranyakashipu. Due to the Prahlad's devotional service, his father was excused from hell and went back to Vishnu's spiritual abode. Verse 48. The Brahmins called out, O best of warriors, father of the world, may you enjoy a long life, for you are the greater devotee of Lord Vishnu, the master of the universe. Verses 49 and 50. Prithu's chief minister added, Dear King Prithu, your reputation is flawless because you always praise the Brahmins called, O best of warriors, father of the world, may you enjoy a long life, for you are a great devotee of Lord Vishnu, the master of the universe. Verses 49 and 50. Prithu's chief minister added, Dear King Prithu, your reputation is flawless because you always praise the most glorious personality, the Supreme Lord, beloved of the devotees. With you as our king, we feel we are living under the direct protection of Lord Vishnu. Our dear Lord, it is not surprising that you so affectionately instruct your citizens regarding their best interests. This shows your great character. Verse 51. The leader of the merchant community then spoke, Due to our past actions, each of us has a different body, and we are enjoying and suffering the reactions of our deeds under such God's supervision. Until now, we did not understand the importance of serving Vishnu, nor did we know how to do so. Today, you have opened our eyes and revealed how to achieve liberation. Everyone in the assembly proclaimed their agreement. The last verse of this chapter, Verse 52, when they again became quiet, the Brahmins' leader said, Mighty Lord, under the normal conditions, Vishnu protects the kingly order through the instructions of the Brahmins, who in turn are protected by their king's power. Mighty Lord, under normal conditions, Vishnu protects the king protects the kingly order through the instructions of the Brahmins, who in turn are protected by the king's power. However, as a great devotee of Vishnu, you are transcendental to the modes of nature. Although king, you are as good as a Brahmin and are able to properly instruct the citizens. You are also qualified to perform the king's duties and protect us all. Loud cheers fill the air, and this brings us to the end of chapter 21. Lord Vishnu Prithu instructs his citizens. And we will be reading from chapter 22 next time. Prithu meets the 4 Kumars. Thank you for joining. Hare Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.